مباشرة إلى الجلسة الثانية من اليوم الثاني من مؤتمرنا لسلاسل الامداد، ومحورها حول تطورات القطاع الخاص ومواكبة التحديثات المحلية والعالمية. يشارك في هذه الجلسة وادعوهم إلى منصة المؤتمر. في شيء يا عامر؟ طيب. السيد كريس بروسلمانس الرئيس التنفيذي للعمليات بشركة المجدوعي للوجستيات، الأستاذ ماثيو ديفيز نائب الرئيس للمبيعات بشركة فيدكس، والأستاذ فاروق شيخ الرئيس التنفيذي لشركة تمكين الخدمات LogiPoint، والأستاذ راكان بن عبد الرحمن العطيشان نائب الرئيس التنفيذي لمجموعة عبد الرحمن العطيشان وأبنائه. يدير الجلسة الأستاذ الدكتور عامر العنزي مستشار سلاسل الامداد لشركة عبر المملكة للخدمات اللوجستية. أدعوهم جميعا إلى منصة المؤتمر لبدء الجلسة الثانية.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بس ننتظر الأستاذ فاروق تبع LogiPoint وراح نبدأ الجلسة. طبعا الجلسة هذه حتكون باللغة الإنجليزية، فنستسمحكم عذرا اللي يحتاج الترجمة، وحتكون يعني جلسة شوية مختلفة. حقيقة يمكن من بداية المؤتمر أمس لاحظنا أنه أغلب كان الكلام أغلبه عن سلاسل الامداد والمبادرات والمشاريع اللي موجودة، فيهمنا اليوم نتكلم عن التحديات اللي تواجه الشركات المحلية والعالمية. وحقيقة حبينا نستضيف يعني ناس مختصين ومدراء شركات سعودية وعالمية نتكلم عن تجاربهم، كيف قدروا يتغلبون على التحديات اللي موجودة. راح نتكلم عن يعني قطاعات مختلفة. I think yeah please. Okay, so please join me to welcoming our panelists. We'll start with Mr. Matthew Davies. He is the VP for sales at FedEx Express. We have Mr. Kris Brusselmans, CEO of AlMajdouie Group. We have Mr. Farooq Shaikh. He is the CEO of LogiPoint. And also we have Mr. Abdulrahman Rakan Al-Otaishan. He's the Deputy CEO of Abdulrahman Al-Otaishan and Sons Group. So, as I said, so we will basically focus on challenges, how they are going after their operations, and we would like to start with Mr. Matthew, going one by one. So FedEx, we all know FedEx. I think everyone here must have dealt with FedEx by one way or another. It's a global, carrier, leader. So you, as a 3PL, as a global leader in freight operations, so what services are in place that suit industrial needs? So now our vision 2030 moving towards having, being a logistics, and also we are trying to attract many industrial, projects and, many projects around the industrial hub. So can you give us your, experience and that, how FedEx are, handling such projects, please?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you very much, and what a wonderful opportunity to be here on behalf of FedEx in this esteemed meeting. And I think this is a very big reflection of the future of Saudi. Clearly Saudi Arabia and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is very important to FedEx, and FedEx is very much in line to help facilitate the 2030 vision of becoming a global logistics hub. So FedEx are going to play a very, very active role in what we invest in this market. Our services are really going to be driven around the future of the market, and that is, if you look at the FedEx portfolio, we have multiple different products to support e-commerce, and I believe 70% of all of the e-commerce product related to the GCC region is coming into Saudi. So that is clearly an area which we'll continue to focus on. We also have one key area which will be our export products, our international priority freight products, which will really be there to help facilitate the growth of the non-oil export market, which of course is going to be the future of any great country, is to build its export markets. And you know, FedEx have had a history of that with over 220 cities and countries around the world of being able to help facilitate and grow that. We also have, alongside that, the FedEx Logistics arm, which is our freight forwarding division, which does our sea freight, our larger air freight shipments and things like that as well. So I think FedEx as an organisation really is in a prime position to help facilitate, you know, really what is at the crux of the 2030 vision of being logistics hub here in Saudi.
Okay, so second we'll move to Mr. Kris. Being at the leading of AlMajdouie logistics group. So now, so in terms of, let's talk about the road transport, because I know here, the kingdom, it's very big, like a continent. So there must be some road logistics challenges always facing the clients, whether it's B2B or B2C business models. So would love to hear from you, Mr. Kris, about your how AlMajdouie Group playing a key role in transport operations. So if you could just shed some light on that, please.
Thank you, Amer. Assalamu alaikum. Also, thank you from my side to organize this event, which is public and private together, to see how we can grow the logistics, which is an enabler now, part of infrastructure and a bigger scope, of course, the 2030 vision. So happy to be invited for AlMajdouie Logistics to voice what we believe, how we contribute, and also what we expect from the company, from the country itself, where can it support better the initiatives that our customers, because we all work for customers, are looking for. If I look at AlMajdouie Logistics, we're, of course, since 1965, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, transport operating, but in the meantime, end-to-end solution logistics company based out of Saudi. We have some operations outside, but primarily Saudi. Answering to your question, threefold. We try to play a front-runner role on the technology innovation side, meaning we all know what happened 3-4 years back. Learning from this, we need to be more resilient and agile. If something else, whatever crisis, as we know there is an energy crisis as well in Europe, if it impacts the supply chain, how to handle it by creating better visibility of your transport operations, or I would say logistics operations overall, in Saudi Arabia. Because you don't act as a one country, you are, and the idea is, and we are working towards this, Saudi Arabia is and wants to be the hub, if not from the world, definitely from biggest traffic coming from Asia, US, and even Europe, somewhere in the middle, closest to all those markets. So this is one. The second is about efficiency. We all want to, this goes back, even if you want to the resilient part, we want to make sure that we are efficient for our customers, and we need, of course, the different regulations, some reglementary, I would say projects, some of them are realized, some not, where I would call it interconnectivity between the ports, the airports, and the hubs. If they're not interconnected, and you just develop industrial zones, the ports, the airports, you will lose a certain part of that efficiency. So with our real-time visibility, with how we work and try to work with government to voice, this is what we need. We're also trying to improve that. I would say then lastly, I do see in terms of volume, and you were talking about it already, Matthew, we do expect made in Saudi, rather than just import or export of oil, we do expect a lot of the FMCG players, consumer goods, and even industrial players to have their hub, and it's already happening, either in Riyadh or somewhere else in Saudi. This means that we need to organize ourselves better, because there will be a lot of, not just local, cross-border business. So this is my last point. We need to, and I'm sure IRU is here with their tier solutions. We need them in line to being in sync with the governmental, if you cross the border, to actually help the cross-border business. Because if you're going to have your hub here, you will move goods from Saudi all the way to Iraq, so to speaking, and even the gateway from Dubai. So this is from AlMajdouie, and I look forward to any other comments there might be to work together with the government, the public sector to improve this. Thank you.
Very interesting, Mr. Kris. I think this is shed some light on how our, local logistics companies are, facing, encountering those challenges. I think this is lessons for all of our, local companies to learn from. So I think those are very interesting points. So I'll come back to you, Kris, on another question, but let me ask the next panelist, Mr. Rakan. So now we know Mr. Rakan, Al-Otaishan Group, it's a leading logistics services group with a diversified portfolio of services. We'd love to hear from you more. So how can you evaluate, let's say, the sustainability of your business with the current situation on world level? Now we used to have Corona, now the Ukrainian, Russian war, all the disruptions, the investment in technology, digitization. So as a family business, Saudi logistics company providing very wide logistic services, how can you maintain the sustainability of your business, please?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be with all the logistics leaders in this room. Actually, in the past 10 years, the world have entered into a lot of development and technologies. And we've seen a lot of startup company revolutionize the way of doing business and the business model and how things is going work. And such thing happened in Saudi Arabia as well. After introducing the Vision 2030, the way of business model has been changed, the way of doing business has changed. And the vision have the targets, and these targets cannot be achieved without the collaboration between the private and the public sector. And in addition to that, the Saudi market have opened to international companies. So the competition have increased. And for that, the way of doing business is not the way it's like before. So all the companies, such as us, the family businesses, we have to adapt to these changes. We have to improve our business model. And for that, we have entered into a transformation strategy where it sits on 3 pillars. The first pillar, where we went through a major restructuring for all the organization charge, the SOPs, job description, etc., to enable our employee and leaders in the group to have a better decision making, to have a better authority, and to be close with our clients and customers. Because at the end of the day, we are serving clients and we need to be close to them. The second pillar in the strategy, we went through a digital transformation. And this, the reason of that is that we want to have a better understanding and to have a better view in the company, how the operation, and to have a better decision making. And for that, you need to have a strong digital platform. And we have done that. And the third pillar is that to have a rebranding our identity, to show our clients and our employees that we have changed the way of doing the business. And during the pandemic, it helped us to not to continue our operation, but to exceed our competitors in the market, where most of our employees, they work remotely, and the digital transformation have helped us to not to continue our operation, but to go beyond that and to improve our operation. Thank you.
Very nice. So I love the way you have, structured your, company facing those, challenges. I have another question, but I'll come back to you also, Mr. Rakan. We'll go back to Mr. Farooq. I have had the chance to speak with him at the exhibition hall yesterday. So for me, as an interested in this supply chain field, this is the first time I hear about their company. So I would love to hear more about which kind of solutions do you offer and what market challenges do you address? And if you can just shed light on your business model first, then we can move on from there, please.
Thank you, Professor Amer. It's an honor to be in the company of this esteemed panel. And it's a pleasure to be addressing to such honorable guests for today's gathering. LogiPoint, as some of you are aware, is one of the premier and one of the oldest logistics park developer in the country. Now, Saudi Arabia is going by leaps and frogs and leading the way in transformation. Whereas we have lots of quick wins when it comes to technology, transformation, process mapping and improvement, we work in a field which takes a little longer. It's about hardcore, old-fashioned infrastructure, which takes time to redevelop as the quality of infrastructure that in the country has been, especially when it comes to logistics, has been lagging behind but, as compared to the rest of the world. So LogiPoint is undertaking a transformation where we are improving the overall logistics landscape with regards to the real estate, bringing in resilience and flexibility for our customers. Today, if any international partner wants to come into Saudi Arabia, finding good quality, grade A, environmentally sustainable facilities is not that straightforward. Either they have to go through a long process of retrofitting any of the existing facilities, or wait for something to be ready in 2 to 3 years' time, as there is a long lead time for such buildings to come through. So LogiPoint has been, over the past 15, 20 years, engaged with various stakeholders to develop and improve the quality of logistics infrastructure in the country. As Kris mentioned earlier, another element that we work on is how we connect one park with another. So bridging the gaps, bringing in bonded modes of transportation and seamless exchange of our flow of goods from one location to another location, that has been an integral and a cornerstone of our strategy to basically make it flexible for our customers to utilize utilize the space efficiently and at a lower cost. Because if we want to compete at the international level, we need to be able to offer a cost-effective, high-quality solution, and this is where LogiPoint works.
Okay, this is actually, some of them are new information for me, so I'm glad that you brought some points. I'll come back also to it, later on. So back to FedEx. Now, when it comes to cargo shipping, Mr. Matthew, so now with all the disruptions we were witnessing and even nowadays, so we would love to hear FedEx, experience in terms of dealing with, damages, shipments, loss, theft. So can you just, tell us about some of the challenges you're facing due to those disruptions in global supply chains and how you're dealing with them?
Yeah, clearly since the outbreak of COVID, we've seen, supply chains interrupted around the world. I'm very proud of the FedEx team globally. Our 600,000 employees have played a very active role in helping to repair some of those global supply chains. It was no secret that when COVID first hit, major disruption, sea freight had stopped, commercial aircraft. We were lucky to keep flying our 700 aircraft that we have around the world. So we played a very active role in, one, the health of the economy by delivering global vaccine around the world, by helping to do PPE, personal protection equipment all around the world. But then as COVID started to become part of our day-to-day life, FedEx then played a very active role while we were still flying, and one of the very few people doing so, in helping people with oxygenators and doing multiple shipments there, as well as the economic health of the world. So FedEx have pride ourselves on dealing with crisis. And let's face it, the world is always going to face some type of crisis, whether it be geographical or political or some type of challenge that we're going to face. And we have contingencies set up to cover all of those various different things. We've seen a big change in the way business is done. I think if one thing has come out of the last few years and all the disruption that we've dealt with, people have seen how important logistics is. It is literally life-saving. And I think that's probably been the biggest learning that the globe has had. FedEx have always known this. So we've always been ready and able and prepared to do that. The other part that we've found has been incredibly important to overcome these challenges that you raise is technology. And I think all of my esteemed colleagues up here have talked about that. The ability to have visibility of what is happening, the ability to be able to react very quickly using data. FedEx have also playing a key role in blockchain and the future of being able to understand product and the life cycle of a product and who's owned it. And that's what is at the heart of blockchain as well. So we've seen all of these things fast-tracked because of the recent situation that we've faced around the globe. So I think from a FedEx perspective, you know, we believe that we've helped fast-track some of these challenges faced globally, and we'll continue to hopefully be a market leader in that area.
Yeah, thank you, to Matthew. Now we'll just, during your talk, Mr. Kris, so I would love to hear also from you in terms of e-commerce. We all know now, you are at the comfort of your home. You can place an order simply and get your shipment either in a, parcel stations or, have them, delivered at your, at your home. So that's the simplest part. But, behind every shipment that you are receiving, there is logistic services. There is a success stories behind this. So I would like to ask you, Mr. Kris, so how can you differentiate your operations from fulfillment operations to manage, orders given through digital channels, or what we call it omni-channels? So how you are dealing with such complexity in e-commerce world nowadays?
Thank you, Amer, for this question. What Al-Majdouie Logistics recognizes definitely in this part of the world, Saudi Arabia, where the penetration rate on digital and mobile phone, I would believe, is one of the highest, especially with a very young population. So it's definitely a sector that we need to look at, we need to support, and we need to make sure as logisticians for the next decade, I would say, that we support it. What Al-Majdouie Logistics is doing, it's, we look at the total chain. I would say the difference is not made in the last mile, as we all know, and you talked about something called order fulfillment. The difference is made in how you organize yourself in, I would say, two things. Customers are no longer, all of you here, including myself, so as customers, you're not interested anymore in the purely same day, next day delivery. You want convenience and you want reliability. The models of the past, which I think started in the US and then further on in Asia and Europe, now in the Middle East, it used to be you want 5 days delivery, you want next day, you want same day, this is the price. There is a difference in price and a difference in service model. This is no longer the case. Customers want things like dark stores. Customers want things like pick-up and drop-off points, and I'm sure having my colleague of FedEx next to me, of course they know what we're talking about here. Ourselves operating in the right locations, we need to make sure that either through partners or ourselves, that we first link, either it's coming, some of it, most of it is coming from Asia, we link it to the, let's say, inland operation of the order fulfillment. We then make models that make it convenient, going back to the word convenience. People like to, if you make sure that I need it next day, but you make sure that they can pick it up in a retail store at 9 o'clock in the morning, this is what they want. They don't want you to tell you, I will do it next day. Reliability means, another example means, rather than saying, I might be able to do it today, but maybe tomorrow, I rather commit to you that 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, it'll be there. So for, let's say, the same price. So this is going back. We are trying with Al-Majdouie Logistics on the back of this growth in this sector, and now it's something that has not been mentioned so far. There is a big opportunity for local Saudiization, nationalization in this sector as well, and I would say in the whole logistics sector, to make sure that either through training programs, and I was happy to hear yesterday, there are already e-commerce supply chain teaching in some of the universities here, which is great. Until, I would say, 3-4 years back, never heard of it. So they teach this type of particular e-commerce supply chain, which is totally different from other supply chain. And they give people the opportunity then, of course, to go and work and look at the big picture, again, supply chain, but specifically for this industry. Because we're going to need this. We're going to need this to do two things. I repeat what I said in the beginning, to make it convenient and to make it reliable.
Thank you. You know, I think this is very interesting because as logistics companies, we are always trying to chase the customers at their needs. We're always trying to, you know, go beyond their expectations. And I was just reading one article a few days back. It says that maybe even the last mile will disappear sometime because now, because sometimes it's, you know, even if it's for B2C, you know, models, sometimes, you know, you go try to deliver the shipment, the customer at their work, out of, you know, maybe they are not available. There are some mistakes in postal addresses. So I was reading this article, they were saying maybe they will have just these parcel stations like Redbox or Noon or other, you know, Amazon. You will deliver the shipment and that's it. It will be nearby your home as if it has been delivered to your home. So maybe because the last mile always very costly for logistics companies, and that's where you measure the success of your shipment. It has to be delivered at the last mile. So maybe you will have, you know, as Mr. Kris said, we'll have more Saudization or nationalization, you know, job created in this, you know, segment of supply chain. Now I'll shift the other question to Mr. Rakan. So now being, you know, heading the, I think the logistics committee at the Chamber of Commerce, I think at the Eastern, you know, Chamber of Commerce. So now, I mean, would like to, you know, have your experience on that. So how do you see the latest updates from the government on the developmental process for logistics sector? Because sometimes more regulations means more cost on logistics companies. Sometimes people, you know, would like to have deregulation, not just to have more regulations, because by having more regulations, sometimes it will, you know, make you more strangled, you know, because we all know supply chain logistics sectors, it's, you know, agile and more dynamic. Maybe by having more regulations, it will, you know, maybe hold you back a little bit. So how do you see the, let's say, the interaction from government, the more regulations, being an active member in that, you know, committee?
I will start that. Everyone knows previously the private sector used to be faster than the government sector. And nowadays, after the introduction of Vision 2030, it's the way opposite, it's the way around. The government sector is now moving faster than the private sector. And one of the most important pillars in the Vision 2030 is logistics. And last year, the National Strategy of Transportation and Logistics have been introduced. And the main object of this strategy is to make Saudi Arabia the global logistics hub. Everyone knows that Saudi Arabia has a unique location. It's at around 3 continents. And there is around 12% of global trade passes by the Red Sea. There is around 600 million population living around Saudi Arabia, whether from MENA region or surrounding countries. So there is a lot to excel from the location of Saudi Arabia. And you know, Saudi Arabia could be the main or the trusted partner in supply chain and logistics for these countries during the difficult times. And everyone knows during the pandemic, the logistics sector was the backbone for all the sectors, healthcare, trading, industrial, you name it. So, and there is no any country in the world can improve their trade and improve their economy without having a strong logistics partner. So we in the Chamber of Commerce, we are representing the private sector in front of the government sector. So we are like the focal point from between the government and the private sector. And our main object in the Chamber of Commerce is to be enabler of Saudi government to reach its goals in the logistics sector in Vision 2030. And we, of course, have always open discussion with the government sector. And there is a lot of changes. And they can hear our opinion. One of the things that we work in the Chamber of Commerce is that 3 years ago, there was no unified logistics ministry for all logistics activities. Last year, the Ministry of Transportation have changed its name from Minister of Transportation to Ministry of Transportation and Logistics Services. And this is, I think, it's one of the biggest changes that happen in the logistics sector. Why? Because now we are working under one umbrella for all logistics services, where it can be easily, we can have one entity that can have built the master plan for the logistics services, and we can achieve the targets. I mean, everyone knows that one of the targets in the logistics sector in the Vision 2030 is to make sure that Saudi Arabia to be among the top 10 countries in the Global Logistics Index. We are trying to reach to 40 million container in 2030 and to 330 million passenger. So we are in the Chamber of Commerce, we are trying to enable the government to reach to this goal. We are trying to make sure to have a good regulation, rules and regulation in the logistics sector to attract foreign direct investment in the sector and to improve the investment, to increase the investment in the logistics sector. This will help the government to, have a better employment and to reach to its goals in the Vision 2030 in the logistics sector.
Thank you I think now even Mr. Rakan have mentioned, the name of the ministry change by having the logistic services, name that tells us, our government, how they have, emphasizing the role of logistic services as a supportive sector for all industry, for all, economic, sectors. And I think also trying to have all the regulations under one umbrella. Like I think the last mile or the, the postal services were under the ICT, Information and Communication Technology Authority or Ministry. Now it's under the Ministry of Transportation. And I think by having one-stop shop, one regulator can, I think, unify all the, in terms of investment, in terms of giving the support to the private sector. And I think this is used to be one of the challenges. Everyone, like foreign direct investor or even local direct or local investor, wants to, have, invest in this sector. They always find it difficult because there are, multi licenses they have to get from different, governmental bodies. Now it's all under one umbrella. That's give us, I think it is very important now to have them under one, regulator. So as a follow-up question for you, Mr. Farooq, you have mentioned, the work you're doing in Saudi Arabia. Now, we'd love to hear from you your latest, ventures in the kingdom, and which kind of value do you bring to the market by having, just as a follow-up from the previous question, please.
Thank you, Professor. LogiPoint, of course, has been at the forefront of developments and innovation when it comes to providing warehousing and logistics real estate solutions. Now, obviously, that reputation has come with a responsibility which we take very seriously, and with focus on renewable energy efficiency and operational efficiency. The building technologies that we deploy, the total life cycle cost elements, the net zero and carbon emission targets, we have set ourselves that we are aligned with this international standards. Saudi Arabia has a Vision 2030 objective, which gives us a guideline, all right? But the way we achieve those objectives have to be dynamic. We should not assume that the rest of the world is staying still, okay? We are also all part of this big global earth. We have a responsibility, we share this responsibility with each other. So one of the key elements, especially when we go and set up new logistics park or start construction of new verticals, is to feel that responsibility in our considerations. So the technologies and the materials that we deploy, they meet the highest standards of environmental and sustainability guidelines. So this is one key element. Second key element is actually time to market. We are in an industry which is traditionally slow moving. Okay. How we can fast track the developments, because the demand is increasing exponentially, and if we continue to work at the same pace that we have been doing in the past, demand will far outstrip the supply. So providing top quality international standard space for our customers is a primary goal, and providing it fast enough is actually a primary goal as well. So these are the two elements where we work on. So we work closely with all our stakeholders, including our vendors, supplier, contractors, rating agencies, and accreditations agencies, to work seamlessly across this whole value chain. so that the product that we want, it meets the requirements and the standards, which are not only local but as well as international. Second, it is done in a time frame that is acceptable to our customer, because it should be available when they need it, not 2 months later or 6 months later and a year later. So this is where our whole innovation focus has been. And third, of course, yes, we are in a part of a world where water is a very scarce resource. So reusing our resources, recycling is a key goal. So that's why we have, as part of overall organization annual strategy program, we put certain targets for recycling, waste management, energy efficiency. And that's the reason all our new buildings now are coming with all solar panels as well. So that to minimize the burden on our national grid and also, of course, reduce our carbon emissions.
Thank you. I think we need more comrades like you, because I think, given all the investment that are coming nowadays with the Vision 2030, most of the projects, I think, we need, more comrades to invest in this, role. And, I thank you for, explaining your, the work you're doing. So I think we can open, we have time before the break. So if anyone would like to ask questions to our, honorable panelists, please. Because if you don't ask, I will ask. So if anyone would love to ask. We can give you the mic if you need. So if you want to ask, we can give you the mic. So I have just a general question for all of our, panelists. I'm very interested in terms of, the automation and digitization and supply chain. Now, even, it's a supply network. It's not even a chain. So are you witnessing some enough investments, either FDI or LDI, in the kingdom for, going, to more digitized supply chain networks or highly automated? So from your experience in this field, so how do you judge on this?
Well, I guess I've been very heartened to, after speaking with some government organisations over the last couple of days, and not just that, over the last couple of years, it's incredible to see what Saudi customs are doing to help make the process much easier, the digitisation, uploading of documents, which means goods are cleared before they even arrive. It's quite stunning how quickly this is moving. So to answer your question, I think what's happening in Saudi is actually game-changing for the industry. Clearly, customs is one of the most significant points. So the ability to have data available to either clear shipments so they're cleared upon arrival or address them before they even arrive into the country is critical. And what I've seen in Saudi has been an appetite to actually do that. As we move forward, I think one of the key areas that digitisation is critical. I think Kris and the team mentioned this, was the ability for private and government departments to work together. The growth in the digital enablement of exporters and importers is going to come from both areas, and the ability to connect together is going to be even more critical. Private industry can only go so far because they can't actually change the rules and the regulations. So that's why it's so critical for the government to have an open mind, to listen to what is going to enable business. And clearly, with the way Saudi is headed and the mindset that this is really happening already. So to me, I think this country should be very proud of the steps they're taking in this area.
So Mr. Kris, what's your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Amer. Thank you, Matt. Some of the things you said, I just wanted to, I'll just try to add a few points. AlMajdouie logistics terminals are running smart already. The trucks are run real-time visible also already. The warehouses, as most of the warehouses these days, are run by WMS. Then you have custom clearance and freight forwarding, what you talked about. The key is, and government has done a lot of good things, as you mentioned, the key is to link, again, whether it's e-commerce or normal trade. You need to link all those pieces, again, to my word about interconnectivity, you need to, but then the technology side, you need to link them together. Yes, certain initiatives are there already, like FASAG and all of that, to link it, but we need to sit together, public and private, to really integrate all those points. And second point, increase the adoption of technology on the ground. Because it's not about buying the best type of software that has been proven in some other area of the world or with some other customer or company. Again, goes back to the training, what I said as well, and the universities, and adoption on the ground. And we can do a lot together. Meli, we have a company under the hood of AlMajdouie Logistics, is trying to also play a role there as an institute to promote. Logistics is more than 50% technology. So rather than just learning the trade or the profession of logistics, let's say, technology, adoption of the technology is even important, where government and private have to work together.
Thank you. Mr. Rakan, please, what's your thoughts?
Answering your question, I think there are two aspects can determine the answer for question. The first thing is that the demand, the customer needs, and the second thing is that the competition. Usually what customer needs determine the improvement in every sector of the technology. The competition as well determine what is your next step gonna be in order to adapt with the changes that is happening locally or internationally. So I believe these two would determine the answer of your question. And we are lucky that we are having a government that enabling, improving new technologies and giving opportunities for companies in the logistics sector to improve the technology, to use the latest technology and having a better experience for the customers. And to also to let the Saudi government to reach its goals. So two things are to answer the question is the customer requirements and needs, which are changing, we're seeing every time. And the competition, or we can call it the surviving mode, where you have to improve the way of doing things because, I mean, the pandemic have improved the pace of doing the technology because you need to be agile. And the more technology you are having, the better agility you are having to respond to these changes.
And lastly, but not the least, Mr. Farooq, please.
Yes, I'm more of a student of digital transformation and technologies because our digital interaction is more to make it seamless with our customers. So our processes are still very much old-fashioned. But I have a different take on this one. I think necessity is the mother of invention. Look at the digital transformation of last 3 years. Yes, there have been some technological innovation, but the adoption happened only when it was needed or it was made necessary, either by COVID or by government restrictions and everything. The adoption curve that we witnessed for e-commerce, for example, I don't think we would be sitting here talking about e-commerce if COVID had not happened. Let's be honest about it, okay? And since it has happened, of course, we have found new ways of serving the customer needs. Now, of course, it has opened up our eyes to, yes, what could be achieved and why are we limiting ourselves to some crisis. Only then we act upon it and go for the digital transformation. So last 6 months to a year, we have witnessed a bit of a slowdown. Now that could be maybe because of COVID burn or people want to get back to their old ways of doing things. But I think the momentum needs to be persisted with. If we want to change things rapidly, we need to continue to drive this momentum one way or another. Not that we want another crisis to happen, but as a consumer and as a provider, both ways. So then only we will be able to sustain a digital. Now, NEOM is a very good example. It's pushing the boundaries, pushing the limits, okay? It's opening up horizons, making us think what could be done in this world with whatever we have today. We don't need to wait for some super new technology to come about. So I think we are continuing with it. And most of the private concerns, as well as government organizations, are now persisting with this momentum. But there is a sense that things, there is a sense of, okay, we settle down. Okay, we are through COVID. We don't really need it. Why force it? Well, I think that thinking needs to change in that.
So based on what I was hearing, I think we are living in a golden time where I think we are, enjoying all these, initiatives and investment in the sector, and I think yet more to come. So if there any question, or I would, yeah, please. So is there any mic so you can give it to there are some people who would like to ask questions. So if there is no mic, if you can just, ask loudly, please. Yeah, there is a mic coming. Yeah. So if you could just please mention your name and you are addressing the question to whom?
My question for everyone, okay. My name is Fahad bin Kunin. I'm professional in supply chain. I have seen very beautiful talks all over, but we did, as a supply chain professional, we are looking for something will help us to operate and to manage supply chain. I never saw somebody's talking about KPIs, how to reduce the cost in practical, as a evidence. Okay, we are talking in general talk, which is really great, okay, maybe theoretical, but we need to know, as a FedEx, as a AlMajdouie, as all those professional people, how they manage to control the cost with the operation. We know the human capitals, we know a lot of things, but what kind of KPIs was established to manage the pandemic, before the pandemic, the old things? We have seen a lot of stories, okay, but we don't know the practical. Maybe if it's good to ask.
I think that's a great question. So I don't know if one of you would love to ask.
Can I?
Yeah, please, Kris. Yeah, and you can move to also to Mr. Farooq, please.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Mohammed, right? Fahad, Mr. Fahad, sorry. Thank you for your question. You're very right, we can talk about all these things, but in the end, there is a service level that you expect from the operator, service provider, whoever it is, sitting here. And on the back of this service level, or actually integral part of the service level, is KPIs, key performance indicators, or even the more modern world, OKRs, objective key results, that lead to KPIs. So I fully agree with you that if you want to make sure that your product is delivered in the right time, in the right place, and all of this, whether it is a container with petrochemicals, or whether it is a pallet with food, whether it is import or export, of course, in the service level, you usually have 3 or 4, maximum 5 KPIs. Not too much, not 10, because otherwise you get confused. If you have 1 or 2, it's not enough. So to give you a few examples, things like amount of rollovers. Rollovers means a container with petrochemicals that comes from where to the vessel. We all know that, and it has improved, to get a slot on the vessel, you need to make sure you keep it, right? We need FASAC to enter it in the port. I'm now going backwards. And you need a terminal and to shuttle and maybe some other services to get it from the plant to the port. For you, all that counts as an end consumer or as a company that is selling to an end consumer is you don't want to miss this vessel, right? So things like amount of rollovers, on-time delivery, I agree with you fully. It is important to have and to keep your cost under control, both the provider as well as the one who is buying the services. Last comment, and then I leave it to my other colleagues, is planning. You can have all the KPIs in the world that you both agree nicely and you start an operation. If you're planning, and this is again goes back to technology integration, if you're planning both of the company as well as the service operator are not in sync, whether it is integrated or not, you will never achieve your KPIs. So I fully agree with you. There's something that we didn't talk about. It's the integral part where you really touch on the efficiency of your operation. I hope my answer was. Thank you.
Mr. Fahad, I will add to what Kris just mentioned. When you mention KPI and you mention cost, I assume you are looking at things still the traditional way. Supply chain should become your competitive advantage. Okay. And if, yes, cost we all care about, but then we look at the overall total process cost. Let's not start making it about cost per move, or cost per container, or cost per parcel, or cost per square meter. Okay? If we start looking at it individually, probably we will lose a big picture. Now, there is lots of theory available on this one, and I think most of the esteemed guests will be more learned in this one. But I think we need to start as a country, one, yes, and then as an organization, and third, then as an individual. How can our supply chain become our competitive advantage? And the KPIs that we set then should reflect that vision, not cost per single activity. So, all right. I hope that gives a different take on what you are thinking.
I think I will also add one point. So, you know, through my consultation works and supply chain, I was, you know, witnessing that usually if the company, their core business is not logistics, usually they don't have a KPIs. Actually, they don't have even a supply chain strategy that goes in line with the organization, a strategy. And even if their core activity is logistics, usually they have a KPIs, but there is no enablers, there is no objectives. They basically, as Mr. Kris was saying, there's no planning, there's no implementation. They have them just on a, fancy, colory, papers, that's it. They don't do anything about them. So usually, even if your core activities has nothing to do with logistics, even if you are outsourcing them, on the outsourcing contractor, you should have also a KPIs that aligned with with your own, organizational, strategy. So, and there should be KPIs, objectives, and enablers. Usually you see KPIs, but there is nothing behind it. So if there is no objectives, if there is no enablers, how would you go about them? So also that's something you might need to consider. So are there any more questions? Yeah, please. So if you could give the mic here to this gentleman here. Are you okay with the time? So I think we are until, noon time. So we might take just one more question. Then we'll let you go for, a break. Okay. Yeah, please.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good morning, everyone. This is Mazen Turkistani from Dow Chemical. Going from the point that Mr. Farooq was mentioning regarding, overall impact. Having 4 of the leaders on logistics, even worldwide or even in Saudi Arabia, what is your sustainability goal in the future? We are speaking about COVID. We spoke about the shorter term technologies that coming, but what are the carbon emissions goals that we are going to have for the future? That maybe will go to the point that Mr. Farooq was mentioning on overall impact. Today, logistics, as you mentioned, Prof. Amer, is not only about cost itself. It's about everything, society, culture, people, everyone. So logistics is playing a major role on all of those areas. What are you going to do, or what are your visions from a sustainability standpoint, not only operationally, but also with the alignment with the Saudi vision of 2060 of zero carbon emission? Are you heading to that? What are the areas, if you can snapshot for each of the companies and each of the leaders on the market, what are you looking for? What are your visions, as well as from us as industries? Where can we help and contribute into that? Because what you're gonna do, gonna contribute to us. What we're gonna do should contribute to you as well.
I think that's a great question. So Mr. Farooq, if you...
Mr. Mazen, if I hear correctly. Thank you very much. Very valid point. And yes, Saudi Arabia is part of an international agreement for achieving net zero carbon emission by 2050. And we as a company, of course, have been leading to it because for us, it's instead of being more operational is the easy part where you can reduce your energy, recycle the water consumption and other consumables. But it's more on the long-term impact when we are building long-term assets who have a life cycle. So we look at it totally. So we, as a standard, we have aligned with most of our logistics partners, especially the international one, who are very stringent on seeing our targets, that whether we are aligned with them. Yes, we are lagging behind. So we are at around, in a time, I would say a time frame of 2040 to 2050, because most of our old construction by that time would have gone, and the new construction that are coming up, they are aligned with those standards. So the materials that we are used, there are certain thresholds that how much portion of that is from recycled materials, and then what is their durability and efficiency for our customers. So yes, we are very much aligned in that respect with regards to our international customers. And it's driven by both, but not only by ourselves, but also our customer demands. Now, this, when it comes to international customers who are willing to contribute to it, and they accept the higher premium for that one. We have not seen the same level of commitment yet from many local players. Let's be fair. Cost is one key consideration for it, because suddenly you see a jump in an operating cost for them if you are going from a standard facility to a high-end facility. So for them, it's a serious impact. I'm sure the gap will be bridged. How long it's going to take is a question of judgment. All right. So this is where we are. Then we have this concern. Energy is still quite cheap. Let me put it this way. We know that despite all what we talk about inflation, energy and labor is still, in this part of the world, is quite inexpensive as compared to, say, even Asia now to a certain extent. So the motivation and drive, you have to find it within yourself. Financial factors will probably discourage you from pursuing those goals, but you have to drive from within, and then only we will be able to achieve those targets.
So I think this is one of the longest sessions, so please join me in thanking all of our distinguished panelists, please. Thank you, appreciate that.